Hello guys and welcome back to my YouTube channel. In this video we are going to talk about the basics of Python along with the introduction of this programming language. We're going to be talking about general concepts of programming as well. So if you are an absolute beginner, this video is the right place for you. So without further ado, let's get started. At first, Python is an interpreted high-level general-purpose programming language. So, what actually is interpreted high-level and general-purpose programming language? Let's clear out what is a general purpose. A general-purpose programming language is made for all types of things, like you can do web development with that, and lots of work. It simply means that there is not a simple work or the particular thing for which this particular language is made. You can do a lot of stuff, like in Python you can do web development kind of stuff, and GUI applications for your computer. You can do vast majority of things with it. Okay, so let's talk about interpreted and high level in next slides. Let's understand how our code works. At first, consider you are writing your code in Python, but that code is not actually understood by your computer. So the code needs to be translated. So the code you have written has to be translated into binary language or machine code that computer will understand. Basically, it is in zeros and ones. Okay, so for that particular purpose, we have three types of translators. As we earlier mentioned, that the Python is an interpreted language. So the translator we are using for Python is interpreter. Okay, so at first there is assembler. Assembler was used in the past for assembly language, and the compiler is the okay, let's consider this is the translator that takes your whole of the code or whole of the program that you have written and converts it directly into machine code before executing. Okay, and the interpreter takes line by line, takes one line of your source code, converts it into the machine code or simply binary code that computer can understand, and executes it and takes another line. Okay, so here are some keywords that I have written for the compiler: whole program at a time, and interpreter line by line translation, and after that execution. Okay, so compiled languages are pretty much faster. Okay, so I could have give you an analogy, because that would lengthen the process of this video. So I'm not going to be going deeper inside that. So if you want to complete a separate video about these translators or compiler, interpreter, please do let me know in the comments down below. And okay, so compiled languages are pretty much fast, like C++, or interpreted languages are a little bit slower, like Python. Okay, so there are also languages like Java, which are also compiled as well as interpreted languages. So we are not going to be talking about that in the deep. We are stick to Python in this video. Okay, so what is a high-level language? There are two types of languages, basically: low-level languages and high-level languages. The high-level languages are close to human understandable form, or simply close to English language. Means they contain more English words and are more readable to humans. On the other hand, we have low-level languages that are close to machine understandable form, like zeros and one, and assembly language was kind of low-level language. So therefore, it was not understandable easily for humans. So on the other hand, if you see the syntax of Python, you can easily understand what is going on. So, but it is far from the understanding of computer. So therefore, we need the interpreter to translate that particular code into machine code. Next, the Python was designed by Guido van Rossum. I don't know how to actually pronounce that, but this is the person that is pictured in this slide. So you can see this was the designer of Python programming language. And Python was developed by an American nonprofit organization named as Python Software Foundation, or PSF. And it was first appeared in February 1991, almost 30 years ago. Remember that Python is a successor to ABC programming language, and a person that I mentioned here started working in 1980s to design a new programming language which was easily readable. We're going to be talking about that in later slides. Okay, so let's talk about version history of the Python. The initial release was Python 0.9.0 in 1991. Then after, there was a major release, Python 2 in 2000, Python 3 with the 2008. Still we are using Python 3 as of now, and the latest release at the time of recording this video is 3.9.5, Python 3.9.5, which is the stable release. Okay, there are some of the features of Python programming language. Dynamically typed, number one. There are two types of languages. There are statically typed and dynamically typed. We're going to be talking about that later. And the language is garbage collected. So what actually is a garbage collector? Garbage collector is the feature of the program, is a program of a programming language, or simply a feature that clears out or manages the memory allocation. So it figures out when a particular variable or a particular resource is about to be freed, or the value that we need is not going to be used in the future execution of the program. So it deletes it from the memory. So there is a proper memory management, and the language gets more memory efficient. C++ is not garbage collected. Therefore, we have to explicitly collect our values that are not going to be used further in the program. So this work is automatically done in Python as well as in Java. This language supports multiple paradigms. Now, the programming paradigm is the way how you write the code. There are multiple paradigms, like the procedural kind of thing, in which you don't write functions. It's a simple code that you write. It's executed in a line by line. Okay, there is another way, that is the functional programming, in which you write everything in functions. And the third one is the object-oriented paradigm. So these are lots of paradigms. So if you want a separate video on them, please do let me know, because this is the important concept in the programming world as well. Python is often quoted as a batteries included language. So what actually this means? Batteries included languages are those which are library rich. There are lots of libraries for Python that you can use. What is a library? Library is a pre-written code for a particular purpose. For example, I want to make an audio player in Python, and I want actually to display SVG icons, scalable vector graphics. So I would use an external library for that particular purpose that a code has other person has already written. So I don't need to write that code for explicitly for myself. Okay, so I can basically pick that code and use it in my program. There are two types of languages, statically typed and dynamically typed. As I mentioned earlier, that the Python is a dynamically typed programming language. In statically typed languages, we have to explicitly define the data types or of the values that we are using in our code, like C++. In C++, we have to define that whether this value is integer, string, or double, or float. But in Python, the compiler automatically figures out the data type because the Python is dynamically typed language. This makes a little bit, the program execution a little bit slower, but it's kind of favorable in the code readability as well. Talking about the file name extensions of Python programming language, we have .py files, PYI files, PYC files, PYD, PYO. So it depends upon the code that you have written, or for the purpose you have written that particular code. The extensions may vary, but mostly we're going to be working with .py extensions. Then code readability in Python. Python's design philosophy emphasizes the code readability with its notable use of significant indentation. In the other languages, we use curly braces to separate out the code snippets, or not actually snippets, but the code blocks. But in Python, we have to use indentations. to let the compiler or interpreter know that this is the separate block of the code. Okay. Supported platforms. Python programs are supported on Windows, Linux, Unix, or Mac OS as well. So it's basically the WORA or WORA concept, write once and run anywhere. So you can write a particular code of Python. You can run it everywhere, any platform. When we compare Python with the other programming languages in the syntactical way, you can see in the JavaScript, we can print hello world program with the just one line. You can see here. I hope that would be visible because these images are a little bit smaller. Okay, so in the C++, we have written that hello world program in about 5 to 6 lines. In Java, we have written lots of code for printing out hello world to the console. Okay, so what is a console? Console is basically a screen where you want to print values. Print means display here, not that is not going to be printing the values, or paper is come outside, paper is going to come outside of your computer, that kind of thing. No, it's going to simply display those data or that data onto the screen. Okay, in Python, there is a just print function that prints hello world in the one kind of line. In C hash or C sharp, we should write four lines at least to print out that code, or that hello world program or message on the screen. So Python is relatively simple, relatively easy to learn, and I'm going to be starting this a playlist with this basic introduction of Python, and we're going to be digging deeper into the Python programming language. For that purpose, if you want to learn Python languages, please consider subscribing this YouTube channel. And this is all for today. Thank you so much for watching.